Hi everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review. The third full-length LP from New Jersey punk band Titus Andronicus, Local Business.
That's what I like to hear. Economy, manufacturing, GDP.
What are you even talking about? What are you talking about?
I'm going for president.
Oh, Cal thinks he's a presidential candidate.
Vote for me, and we'll get America back to the future.
I hate Cal Chuchesta with every bone in my body. I first heard of Titus Andronicus the same way many people did back in 2010 as the band released one of the most ambitious modern punk influenced albums, The Monitor. Was it an overblown album? For sure. But it was still a sincere and pretty inspiring tribute to America's history and the Civil War. A huge record for underground music and the band in general, so early into their career. And surely before Local Business even came out, I'm sure people who didn't really like the band were kind of hoping that they would flub this album, and even people who are huge fans of these guys were maybe biting their nails wondering how they would follow The Monitor up. However, it's not like Local Business would have been the first time a band followed one acclaimed album up with another. And I would say that it's especially possible for Titus Andronicus to achieve this feat considering how ambitious they've been on their past releases. Plus the group has a serious knack for writing some really life-affirming music. However, Titus Andronicus does go through a bit of a lineup change on this LP and many other painfully apparent adjustments as well. Because really cruising from The Monitor to Local Business is, in my opinion, a bit like driving your car 90 miles an hour and then just suddenly slamming on the brakes. The biggest issue for me on this record is sound. It is sound. What happened to the production on this album? What happened to Titus Andronicus' production in general? The guitars on this LP feel simultaneously too clean to have grit, but really too muddy to feel bright. Many of the drum beats on these tracks are pretty buried, really the details in these drums being destroyed by their very low and consistently muddy mix throughout this album. And as far as the vocals go on this LP from Patrick Stickles, he doesn't even sound like the same guy on this album. His vocal performances on Titus Andronicus's previous two albums were much more gruff, but here he's kind of started to favor a much more wimpy vocal delivery, which for sure does have an appeal. I do think emotionally he's not holding back on this album, and he does come off a bit less aggressive. That's gonna do well for some people, but I think performance-wise he kind of lacks the focus that he had on previous two albums, with his voice really going all over the place. So yeah, the sound overall on this album is pretty crummy, and the performances vocally and instrumentally are a little loose. And to me that really suffocates some of the punkier and more straightforward tracks on this album. Songs like Food Fight and Titus Andronicus versus the Absurd Universe. Those tracks in my opinion just sound really weak, unenergetic, and kind of ridiculous. The Subpar Production also kind of makes the band on the song The Electric Man sound like a generic bar band. The production at best on this album kind of just gets the job done, and that's pretty much it. It keeps a lot of these songs from becoming the electrifying anthems that they could have been. But if you can get past that, I think there are a lot of things to enjoy on this LP, because for sure Titus Andronicus does not let down in the songwriting department. Though people are going to notice a more straightforward approach here as well, Titus Andronicus still presents that same fight for life energy in their folk punk indie blend that has made all their previous stuff so appealing. Even though Titus Andronicus does shoot for something fiery and fast and energetic on a lot of these tracks, there is a very clear Bruce Springsteen and Conor Oberst influence permeating these songs as well. Garbage Truck. A lot of these tracks, as I said earlier, feel pretty anthemic, not only because of the chords and the melodies on them, but the very sharp, socially aware lyricism as well, like the opening track where Stickles is basically singing in the opening that at this point they have established that everything is worthless, kind of a nihilistic point of view. And the third track paints this really kind of ugly portrait of a traffic jam, angry commuters, an accident, a tow truck, first responders as well. A lot of these tracks do come off as being kind of politically sharp sharp and critical as well, a lot like in the same way an Andrew Jackson Jihad song is. And a lot of these tracks come together with rousing hooks and piano-backed bridges and big chorus vocals, maybe some harmonized, lighter-waving guitar leads as well. It's just weird for me because I feel like Titus Andronicus is still displaying that same energy, that same desire to just make something that people are going to react to in a really strong way emotionally, with music that makes you want to stand up and scream because you're fed up with the world and kind of, you know, strike you with a little bit of beauty, like the chorus vocals on the song In a Big City. Though I was pretty just turned off by them at first, I can say that overall the performances on this album for a punk record are acceptable. The songwriting and the melodies are there. The energy is there, as well as the style. I just think Titus Andronicus really missed the boat on this one with the sound and the production. If that had been rectified, I could have seen this record as being another great LP for Titus Andronicus, because really this album in a lot of ways is the slightly simpler approach that I wish the band could have taken on the Monitor, but that's just my point of view. I did end up liking this LP, didn't love it, feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing, but what did you think of it? If you've given it a listen, did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What did you... Anthony Fantano, Titus Andronicus, forever.